Good afternoon to those of you connecting from Singapore, and Sabah al Khair to those of you who are logging in from the UAE. First and foremost, please allow me to acknowledge our VIPs in attendance today. Your Excellency Muhammad Ali Al-Naimi, Chairman of Ras Al Khaimah Chamber and Patron of the UAE Singapore Business Council. Your Excellency Mr. Li Xian, Patron of the UAE Singapore Business Council and Chairman of Business China. Dr. T. Chandro, Chairman of the Singapore Indian Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Mr. Farid Khan, President of the Singapore Malay Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Dr. Brian Sugar, President of the UAE Singapore Business Council. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Today's webinar is a jointly organized between three esteemed organizations based in Singapore: the UAE Singapore Business Council, the Singapore Indian Chamber of Commerce and Industry, and the Singapore Malay Chamber of Commerce and Industry. We are privileged today to learn from experts representing renowned entities in the UAE, namely the Abu Dhabi Chamber of Commerce and Industry, the Dubai Chamber of Commerce and Industry, and Emirates MBD. In addition, we will be getting the latest information from a representative of Singapore Chambers about the support available locally for businesses who have international aspirations. Last but not least, we also have a great opportunity today to view an exclusive presentation by the Singapore Urban Redevelopment Authority, URA, about the Singapore Pavilion that is being built at the World Expo 2020 in Dubai. All in all, by the end of this webinar, we aim to empower you with the current information and projection about the opportunities that await you in Dubai and Abu Dhabi. For your information, the main co-organizers of the event are appearing in solidarity for you today live from the boardroom of the Singapore Indian Chamber of Commerce at Stanley Road in downtown Singapore. Without further ado, it gives me great pleasure now to invite our guest of honor, the UAE-based patron of the UAE Singapore Business Council, His Excellency Muhammad Ali Al-Naimi, to give the opening address. Your Excellency, please.
Thank you very much. Mr. Li Xian, Patron of UAE Singapore Business Council, Chairman of Business China. Dr. Andrew, Chairman of the Singapore Indian Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Mr. Farid Khan, President of the Singapore Malay Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Dr. Brian, President of the UAE Singapore Business Council and the EXCO member, distinguished guest speakers and panelists, ladies and gentlemen. I'm pleased to render this opening address for the UAE Singapore Business Council web banner on business opportunities in post-COVID-19 era, jointly organized with the Singapore Indian and the Singapore Malay Chamber. I'm glad to note the involvement of the UAE, Abu Dhabi Chamber of Commerce, Dubai Chamber, Emirates MBD, and Singapore Business Council in Dubai. I thank the organizers for taking the initiative to showcase business opportunity in the UAE. It's important that as we emerge into the post-COVID-19 era, companies in Singapore understand the attraction of the UAE for expanding their business to cover the GCC and the Middle East. It's true that 2020 was a very challenging year with the economic contraction, cash flow difficulties faced by the business, and serious impediment in business travel and communication. The world governments provide strong physical stimulation and other supportive measures. Additionally, the use of technology platforms such as Zoom, MS Teams, and other facilitate communication between parties despite the inability to meet physically. Hence, countries and companies have been able to mitigate the serious economic contraction that were encountered. The UAE offer attraction opportunities for Singaporean companies in the F&B, education, technology, manufacturing, healthcare, food security, renewable energy, and other sectors. Furthermore, Singapore companies can use the UAE as gateway to the larger GCC region, as well as the Middle East and East and North and East Africa. Going forward, I trust that this web banner will pave the way for more collaboration and exchange. The web banners will serve the beneficial role for Singapore companies to become more familiar with the many opportunities in the UAE. I also hope that it will give impetus to physical business delegation when the situation permits. As a patron of the UAE Singapore Business Council based in the UAE, I thank you on behalf of the President and the EXCO of the UAE Singapore Business Council for your kind participation in this afternoon web banner. Thank you very much and welcome you all.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. Before we begin today's workshop, allow me first to share with you the outline of our program that is being displayed now. For your reference, we have also shared the URL of the program on the chat windows, so you can refer to it at any time. As you can see from the program outline, we will first hear from our three main organizers of the webinar: the UAE Singapore Business Council, SICCI, and SMCCI. Following that, the three featured speakers from the UAE will be presenting for about 20 minutes each. After that, we will invite the URA representatives to give their presentation on the Singapore Pavilion before we begin the panel discussion. During the Q&A, if you have any question, please use the Q&A window to submit your questions. Please do not use the chat window to type your questions. We will try to fit as many questions as we can in the allocated time. Lastly, if you have any technical issues, you can chat with our webinar admin in the Zoom chat window. And now it gives me great pleasure to invite Dr. Brian Shagar, President of the UAE Singapore Business Council, to give a brief overview about the UAE Singapore Business Council. Dr. Brian, please.
Thank you very much, Abdul Wahab, for your kind introduction. Your Excellency, Muhammad Ali Al-Dawami, Chairman of the Ras Al Khaimah Chamber and Patron of the UAE Singapore Business Council, Your Excellency, Mr. Lee Shan, Patron of the UAE Singapore Business Council and Chairman of Business China, Dr. T. Chandru, President or Chairman of the Singapore Indian Chamber of Commerce and Industry, Mr. Farid Khan, President of the Singapore Malay Chamber of Commerce and Industry, distinguished guests, and ladies and gentlemen. Good morning to you in UAE and good afternoon to everybody in Singapore. The UAE Singapore Business Council is delighted to work alongside the Indian and Malay Chambers of Commerce in organizing this webinar titled Business Opportunities in the UAE in the Post-COVID-19 Era. This webinar is indeed timely, as many countries, including Singapore and the UAE, have made significant progress in emerging from the COVID-19 economic contraction through the introduction of strong government economic support measures and a well-planned vaccination program. This hopefully will lead to increased economic activity, a potential travel corridor, and the resumption of trade and investment activities between the two countries. We sincerely hope that members of the Malay and Indian Chambers of Commerce participating in this webinar can be well positioned by taking advantage of business opportunities as we emerge from the COVID-19 era. The UAE is Singapore's top trading partner in the Middle East. And conversely, Singapore is UAE's leading trading partner in ASEAN. In 2019, the bilateral trade between the two countries amounted to about Singapore dollars 20 billion. The UAE has the largest concentration of Singapore companies, estimated to be around 600 in the Middle East, covering a number of diversified fields such as infrastructure, real estate, communication, transportation, water treatment, information technology, and trading. There are an estimated 3,000 Singaporeans who live in the UAE, and travel between Singapore and the UAE in terms of visitors is substantial in terms of the numbers, approximately about 80,000 visitors from the UAE itself coming to Singapore. Singapore and the UAE also have very strong investment flows, with Singapore being the largest beneficiary of UAE investments in ASEAN. UAE Singapore investments in Singapore is estimated to be about $5 billion. And conversely, Singapore investments in the UAE is estimated to be about $3.6 billion. There are 16 major UAE companies that operate in Singapore. And I'll mention to you a bit of the landscape of these companies so that you can get an idea of the depth and breadth of their presence here. For example, Global Foundries employs 6,000 Singaporeans and is one of the largest semiconductor manufacturing operations in Singapore. Danata, they employ about 3,000 Singaporeans and operate in Changi Airport in ground services and flight catering. Horizon Terminals run a major oil storage and logistics facility in Jurong Island. Baruch, which is a joint venture between Borealis and ADNOC, which is the largest oil company in the UAE. In fact, it is one of the biggest oil companies in the world, run their global petrochemical marketing operations out of Singapore. Enoch, which is the Emirates National Oil Corporation, run the global trading business out of Singapore. ADNOC have a regional office based here. And some of you may have heard of the Al-Futtaim Group, which is a major player in FMCG in Singapore, owning names such as Emmett, Marks and Spencer's, and Zara, and recently divested out of their acquisition of Robinsons. IFCO, huge conglomerate in FFB, operating in the UAE, has a regional trading office here. Two major banks from the UAE, FAB, First Abu Dhabi Bank, and Emirates NBD, have based their Asian operations head office in Singapore. Of course, we know the two large airlines, Emirates Airlines and Etihad Airlines. They operate out of Singapore, and before COVID, there were 5 daily flights on Emirates Airlines between Singapore and Dubai. You look at the converse situation, again, that's a very attractive story to tell, because there is also a large number of Singapore companies that have actively invested and operate out of the UAE. Just to name a few: Sabana Jurong in urban and infrastructure development, Global Schools Foundation, who run 2 schools in Abu Dhabi and Dubai, Olam International, that have a major commodity trading business out of the UAE, Bank of Singapore, which is owned by OCBC, have a large private banking operation in the UAE. DP Architects, one of our major architectural firms, have been involved in major projects in the UAE. For example, the Dubai Mall, the Deira Waterfront, etc. Minehard is an engineering and project management company that also operates there. ST Engineering in technology and engineering. Indoguna, one of the big Singapore companies in food manufacturing, is a huge manufacturing operation in the UAE in halal food manufacturing. Fish & Co. have franchising operations. So does Charles & Key. DBS, one of our big local banks, has an operation in Dubai that covers the Middle East. And last but not least, One of the biggest investments in the UAE was done recently by GIC, who invested $600 million in the ADNOC pipeline project. So I've given you a broad overview of the corporate presence of both countries in each other's territory. Now I want to give you at this juncture a brief background of the UAE Singapore Business Council. The concept of such a chamber was originally mooted when the Singapore FTA with the GCC was signed in September 2013. It was the first FTA that was signed by the GCC with any Asian country. The UAESBC was officially opened in March 2018 with the mission of promoting, supporting, and enhancing the development of commerce and business initiatives between the UAE and Singapore. On February 2019, the Council was recognized in the Singapore UAE Comprehensive Partnership Agreement that was signed by the two countries on the visit of the Crown Prince of Abu Dhabi. We were recognized as the conduit between the two countries for B2B activity. We have an excellent G2G relationship between the two countries. In addition to the SUCP, there is an annual Abu Dhabi Joint Forum under the auspices of MTI. And there is also a Singapore UAE Joint Committee that meets biannually that is conducted by the two Foreign Affairs Ministry. Let me tell you a little bit more about the structure of the UAE Singapore Business Council and its activities. We have three patrons. You heard just now a welcome address from our patron who's resident in the UAE, His Excellency Muhammad Al Nuaimi, the UAE ambassador in Singapore, recently presented his credentials, in fact, yesterday to the president. He's our patron, His Excellency Jamal Al Sawadi. And then we have Mr. Lee Yishan, who was a former Senior Minister of Trade and Industry, former Member of Parliament, and Chairman of Business China. We have three categories of membership: ordinary corporate members, corporate sponsor members, and corporate sponsor members are sit in the exco. They also have their logos in all our collaterals, in our publicity material, and individual members. Our activities, we organize a range of them. This is one. We have quarterly talks, investment workshops such as this, seminars, networking sessions with other chambers and trade associations, and business delegations to the UAE. A couple of our flagship events, which if I may highlight, is the annual Oil, Petrochemical and Logistics Seminar, and the annual UAE Investment Workshop covering different sectors. Last year, we covered the F&B sector. Our strategic partners are the UAE Embassy in Singapore, the Abu Dhabi Chamber, Enterprise Singapore, the Singapore Business Federation, and we have very close collaborating partners such as the Singapore Chinese Chamber, the Indian Chamber, the Malay Chamber, and trade associations. Now, the UAE government is targeting investors from Singapore in a number of sectors. For example, information technology, artificial intelligence, education, healthcare, renewable energy, agri-technology, pharmaceuticals, food production and processing, and manufacturing. Therefore, I'm confident that from today's webinar, you will discern useful background information that can facilitate your business aspirations in the UAE. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Brian. It is my pleasure now to invite Dr. T. Chandro, Chairman of the Singapore Indian Chamber of Commerce, to give his opening remarks. Dr. Chandro, please.
Many thanks. Dr. Brian Traeger, President, UAE Business Council. My greetings goes to our special guest of honor, His Excellency Muhammad Ali Al Nuaimi, Chairman of RAK Chamber, and also the patron of the UAE Business Council. Mr. Lee Yishan, Chairman Business China, and is also currently the patron of UAE Business Council as well. My good friend here, Mr. Farid Khan, President of the Singapore Malay Chamber of Commerce and Industry. My other good friend, Lenot Tagawelu, Country Manager, Abu Dhabi Chamber of Commerce and Industry, ILO, Singapore. distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Now, thank you all for gracing this event. Before I begin, I would just like to extend my thanks and appreciation to UAE Singapore Business Council and the Singapore Malay Chamber of Commerce and Industry for organizing this webinar with the Singapore Indian Chamber of Commerce. Now here, the Chamber, we serve the needs of local Indian businesses and the business community at large since 1924. SICCI strives to give its members a competitive edge in the global market by providing them with diverse insights, connections, and support services. We offer an array of business support services, including trade matching, job matching, business advisory, networking sessions, seminars, and skills training. Now, additionally, with the hopes of specifically curating our support for those startups, we have the eyes set on international expansion, and we have recently established an international business division. Now, IBD has been working tirelessly to help connect our members with opportunities to fast-track their global outreach. IBD is a flagship service under the International and Bilateral Relations Subcommittee of SICCI, chaired by one of my vice chairmen, Manish Tripathi. With all that we offer, SICCI indeed aims to be the gateway of opportunity to local businesses in Singapore, helping both homegrown and international companies maximize their capabilities. That said, I'm proud to chair a committee that works hard to champion our business interests. Now, in line with SICCI's goals of supporting our members, we have identified that there exists immense potential for our startups to benefit of the strong bilateral ties between Singapore and the UAE. In general, the Singapore-UAE relationship is a strong one, with the latter being one of the Singapore's largest trading partners in the Middle East. Now, with that optimal geographical, political, and trade position, Singaporean companies, not just startups, view the Emirate as a launchpad into the wider Middle Eastern and African regions. Companies can set up shop in the UAE and easily export to these robust markets by leveraging off the nation's air and port connectivity. The UAE-Singapore relation is also important given Singapore's role as a business incubator, serving to bring South Asian companies registered here to third markets like the UAE. Included in these companies based in Singapore is over 8,000 Indian registered companies operating in a variety of verticals from manufacturing to healthcare, who are looking for new markets to expand into. For example, we have Zoho Corporation Private Limited as our member, who is an Indian multinational company headquartered in Chennai, India, with one branch office in Singapore. On the maritime infrastructure and manufacturing front, we have Indian Register of Shipping as our member, which is an international shipping classification society providing ship classification and certification, as well as technical inspection support services. Now, the UAE also holds the largest concentration of Singaporeans in the region, as there are about 3,000 of them currently living and working in the country. UAE is also the top regional trading partner with Singapore. In 2019, Singapore signed the Comprehensive Partnership Pact with UAE to deepen bilateral relations in trade and investments, defense and security, and sustainable development. Sabana Jurong, Semcom, ST Engineering, and the Manhart Group are some of the largest Singapore companies that have been investing in the UAE. We hope that with this seminar, we can encourage more of SICCI's SMEs to partner with the largest Singapore Indian companies in Singapore to venture into UAE. With its stable regulations, attractive tax incentives, modern infrastructure, and public listing norms, the UAE acts as a very viable business incubator for Singapore companies. There have also been recent efforts for diversification in industry, making UAE desirable for a variety of businesses, regardless of their verticals. Now, given the global position of both Singapore and UAE and their key position in trade routes, young local startups will be able to thrive off the clear synergies between the two communities. In fact, to increase exposure of our startups to the UAE market and vice versa, we are very eagerly looking forward to sending a delegation down to Expo 2020 Dubai, the year in October this year. And we are all looking forward for the borders to be open by then, of course. This is in addition to the UAE's favorable business environment and ease of setting up businesses, which are some desirable trends that startups look for when searching for expansionary opportunities. These threats and synergies are especially important in today's post-COVID-19 landscape, where global industry has taken a toll in any room for recovery is highly valuable. Now, that being said, I'm incredibly happy to be here to champion for furthering of business opportunities in the UAE, and I'm certainly very excited to hear what our panelists have got to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Chandro. And now it gives me pleasure to invite Mr. Farid Khan, President of the Singapore Malay Chamber of Commerce and Industry, to give his opening remarks. Mr. Farid, please.
Thank you very much. A very good afternoon, distinguished speakers, as well as our esteemed partners from UAE Singapore Business Council and the Singapore Indian Chamber of Commerce and Industry. As we all know, COVID-19 brought about a myriad of challenges for many locals and global industries, and it is critical we better prepare ourselves for sustainability in the post-COVID world. With the nature of businesses now being conducted remotely, it has unearthed many more possibilities. As well, we are able to run global businesses from the comfort of our home. COVID-19 has also taught us the importance of diversifying our key markets, be it locally or internationally. I believe that this webinar will provide an insightful look into the business opportunities in the UAE and how you as business owners can tap on these opportunities for your businesses. So why UAE? Evidently, UAE is known for its strategic geographical location, for which Dubai is already regarded as the regional hub and commercial capital for the Middle East, North Africa, and more. Additionally, the UAE is one of the most open economies in the Gulf, capable of attracting capital from across the region. Additionally, it is Singapore's largest trading partners in the Middle East with bilateral trade amounting to approximately $20 billion in 2019, while investment flows into Singapore also amount to Singapore dollars 8 billion to date. This resulted in the signing of the Singapore UAE Comprehensive Partnership in 2019 during the visit of His Royal Highness Crown Prince of Abu Dhabi to further enhance trade and investment flows. Additionally, only 30% dependent on oil and gas. The UAE is the most diversified economy in the Gulf Cooperation Council. Based on data from Enterprise Singapore, there are currently over 600 Singapore businesses in the UAE, ranging across various industries that include infrastructure, real estate, communications, transportations, water treatment, information technology, and trade. This would mean that there is sizable footprint of Singapore businesses that our SMEs can leverage upon should they wish to grow into the UAE. Another crucial sector that businesses can tap into in the UAE is the halal sector. Based on a report by Dubai Airport Free Zone and the Dubai Islamic Economic Development Center, the halal economy is estimated to be worth 3.2 trillion by 2024. While the report says halal food and beverage accounting for the vast majority of this share, it is considered the effects of COVID-19 on heavily affected industries such as travel, Islamic finance. In Singapore alone, Straits Times reported that the local halal dining market is estimated at 1 billion in 2019, with 700 million spent by local Muslims. Thus, we are hopeful that international businesses expansion will bring success despite the obstacles brought upon by the pandemic. To aid in the transition into the UAE market, we are indeed delighted to have the presence of UAESBC, which aims to promote, support, and enhance the development of commerce and business initiatives between the United Arab Emirates and Singapore through various helpful ways, which will include providing a forum for both parties to meet, discuss, and exchange ideas and information on an informal basis. As business opportunities become more prominent in the UAE and provide a more evident area of potential for Singaporean businesses, I firmly believe that the role of the UAESBC is crucial for both parties in ensuring a smooth transition and a smooth expansion into the UAE market. Similarly, your transition into the UAE market will see combined efforts from the Singapore, Indian, and Malay Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Both chambers constitute two essential segments of Singapore SME ecosystems with members from wide-ranging sectors and expertise. To achieve greater economies of scale, it is critical to include businesses from these different industries to efficiently leverage the vast potential and opportunities that UAE is equipped with. The Singapore Malay Chamber of Commerce and Industry, SMCCI, prioritize our members' needs and well-being. We have consistently reached out to them, especially the heavily affected ones during the COVID-19 period. The pandemic forced many entrepreneurs into rethinking their business model in the efforts to sustain. I believe the past year was an undeniable struggle for many businesses, and I'm proud to say that Chamber has successfully helped many businesses through difficult times and remain our mission to continue assisting more. As the economy works towards a hopeful recovery this year, the Chamber's mission and vision into putting Malay Muslim businesses first remain consistent. We encourage businesses to be resilient in their efforts to expand and stay competitive despite the challenging times. I hope that this webinar will encourage businesses to do just that with a wide range of opportunities that awaits businesses in the UAE. SMCCI and our fellow partners in today's event are committed to helping you in your expansion journey. I thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Farid. And now we will hear from our first representative from UAE, Mr. Shadi Ilbono. Shadi is the head of macro strategy research at Emirates MBD and will be sharing with us the prospects for the UAE and GCC economy in the post-COVID era. Shadi, please.
Thank you very much. Let me just start sharing my screen. So what I'll do is I'll run through an economic outlook of the region. A couple of things of note. Actually, I would like to actually go through the global economic outlook to start with, and then I will run through some of the developments in the region. Let's start off with the global outlook. All right. In terms of the developments, at least on the global front, I think Q4 GDP results talk about the picture that countries around the world are becoming better at managing their economies under this period of pandemic duress. While we've seen restrictions imposed across many countries in Q1 that were harsher than those we saw at the close of last year, the expectation is that the economic impact will not be of the same magnitude as that seen at the beginning of the pandemic in the first half of 2020. Looking at the figures again in terms of the total COVID count, we're about 128 million and still counting up in terms of infection cases. But the story, and I'll talk about this in a bit, seems to be improving, or actually the story seems to be a mixed patch story where you have countries that are having success with the rollout of the global vaccination scheme and other ones that are facing challenges with that rollout. So let's start off with the external backdrop. The external backdrop is improving. Monetary policy remains accommodative for an external period, for an extended period. The Fed is indicating that there is a willingness to allow the economies to run hot or inflation to shoot the target for a period of time. Fiscal policy across the globe continues to be, especially in developed economies, extremely accommodative. And the key point to that is the recently announced $1.9 trillion package in the US. Global growth forecast is expected to rebound to 5.4% from minus 4.9% in 2020. In fact, the IMF managing director just yesterday was actually talking about revising upwards the global economic growth forecast even further over the coming days or weeks by the IMF, largely on the back of the successful vaccination rollout in the US and this bipolar growth driven by the United States at one end and China at the other end in terms of economic power, with Europe lagging on the back of delays to the rollout of vaccination. The outlook for the US dollar is improving, and this is in line with the strong recovery expected in the US, at least in comparison to the Eurozone. On March 11th, President Joe Biden signed his American Rescue Pandemic Relief Plan into law. This has been probably one of the most important economic decisions from the US that will really have a significant impact on the outlook for economic growth over there. Now, a key measure, of course, in the bill was the inclusion of $1,400 of direct payments to qualified individuals, which is on top of the $600 that were already delivered. And this takes the total to $2,000 between the second and the third checks of stimuluses that the US government have been doling out in the economy. The second second check alone will cause personal incomes to rise by about 10% month on month in January. And in March, we're expected to see an even greater boost as people have already started receiving those payments. Other components of the package include extending the $300 a week unemployment benefit until September and the $360 billion for state and local governments, alongside some green shoots in the labor market. The rapid rollout of vaccination. The ground is really set for very rapid recovery, actually, in the US, with growth potentially exceeding 6%. Of course, the big story before I go into the OPEC, which I want to catch on very briefly and which is relevant even to regional economies, is this global load of fiscal and public debts that have expanded rapidly during the crisis. But there seems to be a growing light at the end of the tunnel, with the conversation turning towards potentially a post-pandemic future, and politicians acknowledging that the widening hole in their finances has to be dealt with at some time. But governments do not seem to be taking away the support just yet. In fact, they're still expanding it. They are making noises about fiscal responsibility and bringing down public debt levels in the future. But there are two sides to this equation. There's a side of one, the expanding debt, if we put debt over GDP, but the other side is actually growing GDPs in these economies, developing and developed economies, while shrinking away the debt as the economies grow. So this gives us the picture that interest rates will likely remain low for a long time. So we're likely to have cheap money with us for some time. The bulk of that, the bulk of government stimulus is actually being funded by a lot of that cheap money, and there is still room for governments to continue to take on debt, given even with debt levels where they sit. I think the picture here is one where governments are actually using this backdrop of cheap money to fund a lot of the government expenditures that they have. Tax hikes are on the horizon. So once the fallout from the pandemic is balanced, governments will start to look at how they want to balance this with their books. But this time around, the focus will be on a post-crisis. The focus on a post-crisis future appears to be on raising taxes rather than on slashing spending through austerity programs. The US government is planning an American rescue plan with a further $3 trillion multi-year infrastructure plan, and the difference between this plan and other plans that have happened in the past is that this will not be an unpaid-for package. The government in the US is talking about increasing taxes on corporations, increasing taxes on wealthy individuals in order to fund it. Please don't ask me on taxation on the regional front. This is something we can handle on the Q&A. I was asked about that yesterday, but we'll keep that for later on. OPEC, very relevant. What's happening in the oil markets is always of extreme relevance to the UAE, to the region. And OPEC has been an interesting story over the past year, or actually post the pandemic. Actually, OPEC's ability to get together and deal with this crisis has been a differentiator in their ability to put a floor on oil prices. And you have this OPEC Plus group, which is this gathering of core OPEC members, plus the larger producers, which include Russia and some of the key other producers. They had a meeting last month where they kept their production targets largely unchanged. Now, this surprised markets. On the back of that, we are actually revising our price assumptions for oil prices in 2021. We expect Brent crude to average $67.50, probably averaging $70 just in the second quarter alone. WTI $63 for the whole year this year, with an average of $65 in the second quarter. However, given that OPEC Plus is now using this method of sort of surprise in markets, as an active market management tool, there is an enormous risk that oil prices this year will potentially see a high level of volatility. So you could see, for example, oil prices rising all the way up to $80, but at the same time, there might be a collapse to $40 if there is a rapid increase in output, OPEC plus output for disagreement reasons, or if there is a rapid increase in non-OPEC plus output. We're talking about the shale oil producers over here. Also, we do not see the price gains as the start of the year, as a start of this kind of new super cycle in oil prices. Oil prices have been heading on a medium to long-term trajectory of dropping. That continues to be the case simply because we continue to develop new energy alternatives, and there is ample availability of alternative supplies of energy. So what is the impact of OPEC plus on headline GDP growth in the UAE? The decision to delay oil production increases means that that sector as a contributor to the UAE's GDP will decline. You see, initially our initial forecasts were calling for production increases in March. That didn't happen. There's a rollout happening in April, and there's a potential that rollout might hold. That means OPEC members were not going to increase output. So that will affect our projections for growth this year, meaning we're not going to see that output hike, meaning we're not going to see that contribution to output, to OPEC, to oil growth into the UAE economy. So our headline UAE GDP growth has been revised down to 1.4% in 2021 from 1.9% previously. And the non-oil sector growth forecast remains unchanged at 3.5%. So our GDP growth forecast for 2022 has been revised up to 4.3% from 3.4%. And this is driven by the fact that the output increases that were going to happen this year are potentially moving into 2022. Now, we expect oil to average 68.5 in 2021. So the budget is likely to record a small surplus this year. We have assumed a 5% increase in expenditures, and this should lead total expenditures to stand at about 410 billion dirhams. The PMI in the UAE slipped to 50.6 in February. The tightening restrictions are weighing on the services sector, are weighing on new activity and work, but sentiment in the UAE is improving on the back of the vaccination rollout. In terms of Dubai's key sectors, we have had data for Dubai's economy for the first half of 2020. So no surprise, all the key services sectors in Dubai were affected. Transport, logistics, retail, trade, hospitality were among the worst affected by the border closures and lockdowns. Travel and tourism did see a boost in December. Remember, the UAE and Dubai specifically were open to the world when much of the world's key tourism hubs were closed. So hotel occupancy rose to 69%. If you look at the whole of 2020, hotel occupancy stood at 49% against 74% for 2019. So RevPAR actually declined by 45% for the year as a whole. You had activity slow down after the new year with a lot of global border closures. That means less people were coming in, but it is starting to pick up towards April, particularly as we move through to the Good Friday and Easter holidays. And Dubai remains relatively open as a global tourism hub. For the real estate sector, the rate of price increases, price declines has eased. There's still a lot of new supply, a pipeline that is coming through, but new projects are not being launched. The volume of transactions has recovered to pre-pandemic levels in the fourth quarter. Budget data through September 2020 showed a 15% decline in total UAE government spend. The budget recorded a deficit of 32.1 billion by the end of 2020. Apology, here's a slide. So we estimate a full year deficit of 4.1% of GDP in 2020. We estimate the budget will be close to balance this year, almost 0.2% of GDP on higher oil prices. Overall, the UAE has a very strong balance sheet. Sovereign wealth assets are estimated at over $800 billion and debt at around $210 billion. The sovereign is still rated AA2 and AA- with a stable outlook, and the government has approved the strategy to develop domestic debt markets. So overall, the picture in the UAE is one of recovery that we're seeing in 2021. The oil sector is actually a detractor of growth, not in nominal terms, but in absolute output numbers, simply because OPEC is not increasing output. We're not seeing that feeding into growth, but we are starting to see a recovery in different segments of the services sector. My own point of view is that Dubai's decision to remain open during the pandemic as a tourism hub has played very well to its reputation globally, to the reputation of its tourism sector, and also has given the tourism sector a leading edge in terms of managing the dynamics of that slow reopening and normalization of the tourism market. So this is one of the sectors that will potentially see a lot of strength over the rest of the year as global borders reopen again. Thank you very much, and I'll keep the balance of issues to discuss to the Q&A.
Thank you, Shadi. Now I would like to invite Mr. Leonard, the country manager for the Abu Dhabi Chamber of Commerce in Singapore, to give his presentation on Abu Dhabi business prospects in the post-COVID era. Leonard, please.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your kind introduction. My apologies. Your Excellencies, distinguished panel and speakers, ladies and gentlemen, a very good day to all. I hope that all of you are staying safe, you and your loved ones are staying safe, and in the best of health and spirits. My name is Leonard Tangavelu, and I am the international representative. I'm from the International Representation Department of the Abu Dhabi Chamber of Commerce and Industry. What I hope to do today is to give you an introduction into the Emirate of Abu Dhabi, followed by the initiatives that the Abu Dhabi government is mooting, and the opportunities that lie for both Singapore businesses and the Abu Dhabi business. I'll start my slides now. Just a bit of an economic overview of Abu Dhabi. Abu Dhabi GDP is about $240 billion in 2020, which is about 61.5% of the total GDP in the UAE. A lot of this has to do with Abu Dhabi's being blessed with oil and gas. Sorry. Apologies, I'm having some technical issues here. My apologies there. Blessed with a very healthy oil reserve, which accounts for 94% of the oil reserves in the UAE, which in turn, to put it in perspective of the world, it accounts for 9% of the world's oil reserve. We have a population of about 2.9 million, which accounts for 33% of the UAE population. And out of this, about a good 80% are expatriates and about 20% are Emiratis. Abu Dhabi is blessed with land. We are the largest emirate. We occupy about 87% of the landmass within the UAE, and in real numbers, that would be something like 64,000 square kilometers. As I mentioned earlier, 80% of the population are from other countries. So that makes us a little United Nations, a lot bigger than that. We have about 200 nationalities in the Emirate of Abu Dhabi. So it's very multicultural, multiracial, and very accepting of international talent. Abu Dhabi has always embraced trade and commerce. There's a very unique program that Abu Dhabi offers investors. And when I say investors, I don't just mean investors with money, but investors of talent, which is what the Emirate of Abu Dhabi is very, very passionate of. We offer a 10-year visa. It is also known as the Golden Visa. So I don't know of many countries that have offered that. So it is a very innovative outreach to ensure that we constantly have talent coming into our country. We are one of the safest cities in the world. For those of you who may look at Abu Dhabi and want to look at Abu Dhabi, I believe we've been the safest city in the world for the past 5 years in succession. Abu Dhabi embraces foreign ownership. This used to be limited to the 3 zones, which were the Kizat or Khalifa Industrial Zone of Abu Dhabi and Zone Spot. However, this is expanded now to foreign ownership within the Emirate of Abu Dhabi itself, in certain industries. There are about 2,000, so I shan't go into each one of them. Next, Abu Dhabi is blessed not only with oil, but with an excellent port. We have the 2nd largest port in the world, and this is complemented by one of the best infrastructures available in the MENA region, or the Middle East and North Africa region. We are connected by rail, by air, by land, and by sea. So this would play a very important role in how Abu Dhabi sees itself in the years to come. For the information of all, we've had an injection of about $29 billion of foreign direct investments last year. So what does Abu Dhabi look for? I can generally say it comes down to 10 economic pillars. Besides oil and gas, there's a very huge need for agriculture and water, healthcare and education, transportation and infrastructure. This is especially so when I go a bit deeper into my presentation. We want to be the manufacturing center of the world, and this is very, very unique. This is very useful to Singapore, in particular to Singapore audience, in that we do not have a quota on the number of foreign on labor. Land is relatively affordable. Utilities is also very cheap. So all of a sudden it becomes a very, it could be, and I hope that it becomes the manufacturing center of Asia. Abu Dhabi is huge and an innovator in the alternative, in the sustainable energy and renewable energy. We embrace another sector that we embrace is the defense and aerospace sector. For those of you who are familiar with this sector, Abu Dhabi currently has a company called Nimr that manufactures all-purpose all-terrain vehicles, and it's the 5th largest in the world. This would interest a lot of our investors, and it's real estate, and this is basically because there's so much land to develop. We intend to convert the many myriad of islands and the desert areas into tourism tourism attractions. So there's a lot of opportunities for infrastructure and real estate development. Of course, we cannot forget our petrochemicals industry, where we talk about upstream and downstream. And finally, information technology, and that's a buzzword. Information technology that stretches from biotechnology to medical technology to fintech and to artificial intelligence. So what are the incentives that we offer in Abu Dhabi? In 2018, Abu Dhabi embarked on a plan called Gadan 21 or Tomorrow 21 and this was pre-COVID. And I'm glad we did that because it was a 50 billion dirham or a $13.6 billion dollar budget that was given to the economy to propel the commercial aspects of Abu Dhabi. So what is Gadan 21? Gadan 21, as I mentioned before, is short for Tomorrow 21. And how do we do this? There are 16 initiatives, but I can broadly classify it into 6 different categories. One is there are very favorable government fee exemptions that are given to businesses. There is a lot of investment in people, SMEs and startups, seed capital being one of them. The ease of entering foreign talent entering Abu Dhabi to teach the Emiratis, and of course the small and medium enterprises, which form 90% of the businesses in the Emirate of Abu Dhabi. We have attractive, under the Gadan 21 plan, there are attractive, very attractive lending options to businesses, some of which are at almost 0% interest. Again, the emphasis is on developing the emirate. The government has also kindly embarked on the waiver of municipal fees. That can add to quite a lot, and there are lots of generous rebates that are given to businesses. Abu Dhabi is renowned for its accelerators and incubators, and this is tied up with startups. And this include accelerators in accelerators and incubators in many industries. I could name a few of them. For renewable energy, we have Mazda. Renewable and sustainable energy, we have Mazda. We have Abu Dhabi Global Markets for the fintech industry. We have 2454, which is an entertainment, which is linked to very close to, and which is an entity which is for the entertainment industry. There is another, excuse me, there's another accelerator that is also of interest to most people, and this would be the, excuse me, sorry. My apologies. And finally, we talk about the preservation of our capital markets. The bedrock of any economy is the ability for the government and the financial sector to work. And in doing so, Abu Dhabi has done an excellent job with this. Some of the incentive schemes that we have post-COVID include a very, very generous US $69 billion economic support scheme underwritten by the Central Bank of the UAE to support the private sector during and after the pandemic. This is not exclusive just to Abu Dhabi companies. It is inclusive for companies that want to come and invest invest talent, invest capital in the Emirate of Abu Dhabi. We have one of the world's largest wealth sovereign funds. It's called the Mubadala Fund, and there is a 20.7 billion US dollar allocation of these funds to invest in Abu Dhabi's infrastructure, and this ties in with what I mentioned before of converting some islands into resorts, as well as the desert areas into resorts, and finally to increase the manufacturing capabilities of the Emirate. We are very huge in tech. Recently, there was an announcement of $272 million worth of incentive packages to tech companies. This ties in with the importance of food security, and it includes vertical farming. It includes vertical farming. Vertical farming, food technology, new advance in food technology. So there's a lot of funds that the government is prepared to invest in. And this will be very interesting to Singapore companies in particular, given our push for food security, and as well as for the technological innovations that are derived in the agricultural sector. Finally, we have a $287 million incentive program to attract startups to establish their presence in Hub 71. Hub 71 is an accelerator for tech companies, and it's located in the Abu Dhabi global markets. So that's basically an overview of Abu Dhabi. If I could, I would like to speak a bit about the Abu Dhabi Chamber of Commerce and Industry. We were founded before the formation of the Federation in 1969. We have local, regional, and international representations. We have more than 100,000 members from more than 200 nationalities. Now, the difference between the chambers of commerce in the UAE and Singapore are that the chambers of commerce are actually organs of the local government. So we are an organ of our local government. So what do we do? As I mentioned, we support the private sector. We encourage bilateral trade to and from Abu Dhabi. We organize trade missions, and I can't wait for this to start. We've taken a bit of a break for the past year and a half due to COVID. But inshallah, we will be having a number of trade missions and delegations visiting Singapore. We organize a myriad of commercial activities that include, currently include webinar-based programs, where we actually have a very unique system of business matching. It's proven very successful that we match businesses virtually. We have a comprehensive economic department, and this department is very vital to the success of businesses, because it produces economic reports and it does market studies. So you don't need to engage your own economic company. You come to the chamber, and the chamber has a department for this. Finally, the chamber is huge in corporate social responsibility. In April of 2020, we donated $4.2 million from the chamber to the Hope of Tomorrow cause, basically to support the new businesses. In a nutshell, what are the suite of services that we offer? We obviously have a commercial direct. All members are entitled to access a commercial directory, which is very comprehensive. Another unique feature of the chamber is that we offer free legal consulting services. One thing that is very unique to Abu Dhabi is that, and if it's stated in your M&A, we can do adjudication of an arbitration as well. So you don't need to go to court. Next, as with all chambers of commerce, we issue certificates of origins. As I mentioned before, we prepare lots of market studies and reports. In fact, we have a monthly publication called Business Voice that tells you, that informs you of the latest happenings and opportunities in Abu Dhabi. We are very huge in education and training. The Abu Dhabi Chamber is very proud to be the principal chamber of the UAE Academy. We have our own academy to promote and to educate and to equip our businesses, our business people with skills that are necessary for tomorrow. We organize, as I mentioned, B2B events and exhibitions. It's taken a break last year. We were not able to organize anything physically, but we organized a huge number of virtual B2B events, and it has proven very, very effective. Finally, you have Abu Dhabi Chamber of Commerce is represented internationally, locally, and regionally. I wanted to touch a bit on the economic relationship between the Emirate of Abu Dhabi and the Republic of Singapore. Sorry, on the 22nd, on the 22nd of December, on the 22nd of March 2021, the 13th Abu Dhabi Singapore Joint Forum was held virtually, and this was a very, very important event as it involved the Minister in charge of Trade Relations in Singapore, His Excellency S.S. Warren, and the Chairman of the Abu Dhabi Executive Agency, His Excellency Khaldun Al Mubarak. And during this discussion, both sides reaffirmed collaborations on technology, information, artificial intelligence, space technologies, and public sector partnerships. So there is a new scheme. This will be very interesting to our Singapore counterparts, and it's called IPI Singapore, the Innovation Partner for Impact. This is a subsidiary of the Enterprise Singapore, and it's to encourage Singapore companies to expand internationally, to grow, basically to grow beyond Singapore. There are also a number of exchanges on space programs between both countries. And there is an MOU that has been signed between the Singapore government and the Abu Dhabi government with the Civil Service Civil Service College in Singapore to promote knowledge and experience and the exchange of ideas between both countries. This slide, which came a bit early, we have a number of Singapore companies present in Abu Dhabi, and they are big names in the industry. They include Capital Land, Advanced Technologies, Mindheart, Sabana Jurong, ST Engineering. So these are companies that have seen opportunities that Abu Dhabi can offer. Conversely, Sorry, slides seem to be going out of. Conversely, we have about 200 Abu Dhabi organizations registered in Singapore, and is shared by Dr. Brian. They include very, very huge names like ADNOC, the Abu Dhabi National Oil Company, Borouge, the downstream for oil and gas, Etihad Airways, First Abu Dhabi Bank, and Global Foundries, which was Chartered Semiconductors in the past, and as Dr. Brian had mentioned, employ more than 6,000 locals. This brings me to the end of my presentation. I do apologize for a bit of the slack in the slides. But before I finish, I would like to just say a word of thanks to the UAE Embassy in Singapore, Enterprise Singapore, the Singapore Business Federation, and of course, the UAE Singapore Business Council to encourage trade and connectivity between both countries. Thank you very much. Take care and stay safe.
Thank you, Leonard. Now I would like to invite Mr. Hassan Al-Hashimi, Vice President of International Relations for the Dubai Chamber of Commerce and Industry, to give his presentation on the emergence of Dubai in a post-COVID era. Mr. Hassan, please.
Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh from United Arab Emirates. It's still morning time here. And good afternoon to my colleagues and friends in Singapore and elsewhere. Just gonna share my screen here, just to give me a minute. Thank you so much for, first of all, for the organizers for this kind invitation to be with you this morning. It is a pleasure to once again have this opportunity to speak to you about the business prospects in Dubai and challenges caused by COVID-19. Very quickly, because I know I only have 20 minutes and I don't want to take much of your time, we're going to talk about COVID-19 situation, but very briefly, because we are all aware of the challenges. And of course, it had quickly emerged as a #1 global risk that has affected economies all over the world, including Dubai. Governments have, and everywhere in the world, have taken several measures, of course, to mitigate the impact of the pandemic. And this is no different than the United Arab Emirates and in Dubai in particular, with the stimulus packages that was provided and other means that helps the recovery. Now, many Dubai companies have implemented operational changes to be more resilient. And although the virus has, the pandemic has caused many economic challenges, it has also, and I think that would be the focus of my slides as I speak briefly about the challenges first, moving forward. What did the pandemic do in terms of identifying business opportunities for all? As you can see in front of you on this slide, around 91 countries have applied export measures when it came to medical supplies and medicines during the peak of or the start of the pandemic. Now here in Dubai, the traders had really experienced disruption on their products, especially that is related to medicine and food, due to the closure of ports and export activities. It did, in fact, create a lot of disruptions for businesses, mainly in sectors related to retail, aviation, tourism, entertainment, finance, real estate, and others. Of course, the previous speakers spoke about the whole tourism and hospitality industry, and how at some point of time, of course, back in December, well, still remains the case, Dubai is still open to the world and receiving tourists. And we are hoping that as the vaccine rollout accelerates and continues to accelerate, that as Expo comes, we will be in a much better situation than where we are today. It also created disruption, of course, in cash flows and reduced the productivity. Some companies face challenges in accessing their customers here in Dubai due to the lockdown, when we had that lockdown. But of course, as you all know, and as we are communicating here today, technology and virtual means have really taken us to the next level. When it comes to any businesses, it's all about analyzing the impact of challenges, working towards a recovery strategy, plan development, and then testing and maintaining the plans. And some Dubai companies had already business continuity of pandemic preparedness plans prior to COVID, but it really, the COVID situation has really accelerated the measures that have been taken to mitigate the impact of COVID-19. Many companies offered, of course, as you know, working remotely options. Besides, also Dubai businesses provided additional hygiene advice and supplies. We started seeing many campaigns that works towards creating that awareness. And many retail companies quickly and heavily invested in e-commerce and partnered with third-party delivery apps to maintain their sales. So when you talk about, when we talk about the challenges, there is no doubt that one can see these challenges two ways. Either it is something that you would continue to see it as a hurdle, or you actually accept the situation that we are in and look at what opportunities it can provide. There are a couple of industries that have benefited, and we see that it will continue to progress as we move forward. The medical industry is a clear one, of course, here for businesses in Dubai. It has created new business opportunities in medical supplies. And as you can see in the chart on your right-hand side, with regards to China's export of COVID-19 medical supplies to the United Arab Emirates. The value of China's export has reached numbers that we were not anticipating because of the situation, of course. And the outbreak has also increased the demand for pharmaceutical products. And this is obvious, of course, due to the reasons. But moving forward, we do see this is going to continue, because even if vaccines are fully implemented, the consumer behavior has shifted and will change. And masks, we will be with masks and other hygiene products for a very long time, especially as the airline links and the global connectivity starts to open up. New trends that we've witnessed here in Dubai is related to the food market. Despite the supply chain challenges, it continued to grow and still continues to grow here in Dubai. The pandemic has increased the consumption of healthy and organic food products, the F&B in the F&B market. This you can see in the chart the forecast for UAE's healthy food products and retail sales, and this is projected to continue to grow. You know, with certain restrictions, and as we individuals become more and more aware of our health, we're seeing that trend of the intake of food heading more towards healthy and high and organic food consumption. And it's no surprise that the online retail sales have surged quite significantly here in the UAE to 255% year on year in 2020 to reach 412 million US dollars. The value of online F&B sales in the UAE is projected to reach 619 million dollars by 2025, and it will become, you know, the new norm as we move forward. So this trend will continue in the whole food market industry. Speaking of logistics, which is another area of opportunity, we've seen the demand for delivery and logistics service increase quite significantly. In between the first week of January and the second week of April, back in 2020, when you look at the Google searches for the words food delivery and food grocery, that has grew quite significantly, 51% for that and 430% for food delivery. Now that growing interest in grocery delivery forced many businesses, supermarkets and others to upgrade or introduce their own delivery services. And this, we see this to continue. The world has changed around us. The way that we conduct our businesses have been dramatically impacted. And this is a trend that will continue as we move forward. All of this, of course, when we talk about these different trends, it all comes down to the information technology and the infrastructure, whether it is remote working applications that have been doing really well, or the demand for cybersecurity and the risks that are associated as more and more businesses go online, or the demand for e-commerce services in general. And you could see the numbers and figures, and of course, all of these slides will be shared with you. I don't want to take much of your time to dwell into the numbers, but that is an area of business opportunity as we move forward ahead. Another business prospects and an opportunity is the whole entertainment segment, the demand for one-to-one basis entertainment such as virtual reality programming, gaming, TV-based movies, all these streaming services that we're seeing and we are all probably subscribed to. These are all have been doing extremely well, and there is room for an opportunity for many to get into this space. And there was a growing interest in online games actually in the UAE. Popularity of online games started to rise with the lockdown, and not only just for consumers kind of behavior, but also related to conducting the seminars and events. We're all looking at different options of hybrid or completely virtual, and these are pockets of opportunities that will take us there. Another prospects also for businesses as they move forward is the telemedicine, for example. I mean, we've all heard about or know about the telehealth and what the future can actually be, but the telehealth market in the UAE is expected to reach over 536 million US dollars by 2025, and that is an industry that is huge and will continue to grow. We are now used to doing consultations online, and the opportunity for businesses, particularly in that space, will continue. The demand of legal services as well that is being conducted virtually is happening. My colleague from Abu Dhabi Chamber of Commerce spoke about arbitration and mediation. And we here at Dubai Chamber as well, we do a lot of these now completely virtual, and it has worked extremely effectively and will continue to be the trend moving forward. Another area, of course, is education. We all know the importance of creating the necessary tools and the infrastructure that will take us there. So as you can see, there are pockets of opportunities for businesses moving forward, and I'm very excited as well to see some to know that the next speakers will talk about Expo 2020 for this event to take place here in Dubai, and seeing and to unveil and know more about the Singapore Pavilion. This is a very important event for everyone, for the world, for the region here. And I just wanted to share with all of you that Dubai Chamber of Commerce is a partner of Expo, is the business partner of Expo, and we're bringing a lot of activities and events at the Expo site. From the Global Business Forum Africa, we're doing one for Latin America, and for the very first time, we're doing Global Business Forum on ASEAN, which is going to be extremely interesting. We do have business thematic forums that are happening throughout the period of the Expo, 9 of those that we are putting together. We have the World Chambers Congress coming to Dubai in November, which is really exciting, especially for us in the chamber sphere here. In addition to the Retail Summit, in addition to Global Islamic Economy Summit, I've heard some of my colleagues speak about the importance of Islamic economy. So that's happening in Dubai as well in November. So there's a lot of programs, a lot of interaction that is coming our way. So I urge you all, with this great collaboration that we have with our partners, the UAE Singapore Business Council, and all the other partners and organizers of this forum, to seize this opportunity and really look forward and look strategically and look ahead of what is there to come. Thank you very much, and I wish you all a great day ahead.
Thank you very much, Hassan. Now it gives me great pleasure to invite our two guest speakers representing the Singapore Urban Redevelopment Authority, who will be sharing with us on the topic of Introduction to the Singapore Pavilion at Expo 2020 Dubai. Mr. Larry, the Singapore Pavilion Commissioner General, and Mr. John Bia, Senior Planner for the URA.
Right. Thank you very much. Well, good afternoon to all, and I hope all of you are well and staying healthy and safe. That's very important nowadays. I'm Larry Ng. I'm the Commissioner General for Singapore Pavilion at the World Expo in Dubai. Well, thank you for inviting us to share more information on the Singapore Pavilion. I think this is a very appropriate platform, since we have all the key chambers of business and industries and business councils all on board now, and both in UAE and Singapore logging in to listen to a very important seminar today. Now, the World Expo in Dubai was originally meant to be opened in October last year. So we all know that. Unfortunately, due to the COVID-19 global pandemic, the Expo is postponed for a year. It is now scheduled to be open on the 1st October 2021 for 6 months until the 31st of March 2022. Now, before I get my colleagues, Senior Planner Chan Chun Piao, To share the presentation on Singapore Pavilion, I would like to invite all of you to come on board either as sponsors or partners and leverage on our beautiful and green Singapore Pavilion to organize your business forums, workshops or seminars, or even business networking sessions. We welcome both UAE and Singapore businesses to come forward and work with us for better opportunities at the World Expo in Dubai. I guess the expo organizer has pitched the World Expo, because it's starting in October this year, to be the key platform for the world to meet. And I hope it will certainly materialize in the sense that more people will attend the expo as we get out of the COVID-19 situation safely. So we request all the Chamber of Commerce and Industries and Business Council to please encourage your members to step forward to leverage on Singapore Pavilion to extend your reach internationally. We really look forward to engaging all of you. Now, because the time is very short, I'm going to pass to my colleague to continue the sharing. And of course, we can always take it offline. If you do have any questions, you can write to myself or my colleagues. So over to you, Chun Piao.
Yes, hi, good afternoon, distinguished guests and fellow speakers. It is a real pleasure for us today to be sharing with you the Singapore Pavilion, which we will be presenting at the Dubai Expo that's opening in October this year. So let me just put on my deck of slides. So as Larry has mentioned, the expo has been postponed for about a year, and it will now run for 6 months from the 1st of October 2021 to 31st March 2022. Now, we do expect a little bit of impact in terms of site capacity due to the safety measures for COVID-19, but the expo organizers are very confident that visitors will show up over the duration of the 6-month expo, especially given the UAE's high inoculation rate, as well as the vaccination programs picking up all over the world. Now, even so, the expo is also ramping up the virtual and hybrid program formats, which is also what we are doing for our Singapore Pavilion as well. So this is a site model of the expo. The Singapore Pavilion is a small size pavilion located in the Sustainability District. And what you see here is a diagram of the SG Pavilion. The key idea of the pavilion design is that it is a prototype for livable and resilient cities of the future. So in the first part, as you enter in the ground level, this is designed as a garden space where visitors can experience the key exhibits within the 3 conical structures via a series of ramps that we call the canopy walk. And this is where they will also experience the sustainable design features in the pavilion, which eventually will lead up to the Sky Market on the highest level. They will get to learn about how similar design manifests in Singapore and demonstrates our city as one that is livable and resilient. And finally, in the last part, as visitors exit the pavilion, we would like to give them an opportunity to consider how the individual choices and collective actions can help to make livable cities a reality for everyone. So upon arrival, this is what you will see: a large 3-dimensional greenery, a water garden in front, and also a display of our national orchid. And the mirrored ceiling at the Sky Market level already gives you a glimpse of the activities on the highest level. And this is what the pavilion looks like with night lighting. So upon entering, the first stop will actually be the city cone in the center, which is where there's a 3-minute-long multimedia show, after which they will ascend the ramp, the canopy walk, to access the upper levels of the pavilion. So the multimedia show in the city cone is helmed by local artist Brian Kotong Tan, who is also part of the creative team behind the Bicentennial Showcase in 2019. So this is a 3-minute-long, 360-degree immersive show that is a creative interpretation of the challenges faced by Singapore that illustrates how we have transformed our limitations into both opportunities and possibilities, and basically to illustrate how we are rethinking the way we design our cities to mitigate challenges brought about not only by climate change, but as well as the ongoing pandemic. So after the show, as visitors enter the canopy walk, they'll be able to get up close to the hanging gardens, the multi-layered greenery, as well as the multiple ground levels of the pavilion. So there will be lookout and vantage points along the way, which are also good photo opportunities. And here we have deployed dry mist systems to ensure thermal comfort. In the flower cone, it is an installation of colors and lights featuring orchid blooms. This conveys the important message that restoration of nature into our urban landscape is something that all of us should be paying more attention to. And similarly, in the rainforest cone, which draws inspiration from Singapore's urban primary rainforest, it reinforces the idea that cities and nature can coexist. And eventually, the canopy walk leads up to the Sky Market, which is the open platform for congregation activities. It's designed to be a casual, fun, and relaxing space. And there will also be seating and food stalls located here. An arena, a small arena space towards the rear of the Sky Market is used as a venue for performances, for workshops, for talks. And there is a full-length video screen here for screening of films and video content. The exhibits and programming here in general provides insights into Singapore's urban solutions for livability, which in turn create that conducive environment for a vibrant Singapore culture. So visitors will exit the Sky Market via a set of staircases. There will also be lifts for people of determination, where they will eventually end up back on the ground level into a gallery that showcases a collection of sustainably designed products by Singaporean artists and designers. So this is an example of the kind of retail items. These products carry a Singapore-centric brand and product narratives. These are created by Singaporean small and medium enterprises that practices the ethos of sustainability. And similarly for the F&B offerings, again, these are Singapore heritage brands that carry a Singaporean narrative, ranging from hawker food culture to innovators who have come up with new flavors that are unique to us. So next, I would like to show you a 60-second fly-through, very short video clip. This is the pavilion entrance. And you can see the ramps, the canopy walk that leads up to the upper levels. And the dry mist systems that are designed to ensure thermal comfort. And this is coming up to the Sky Market level. Back on the ground level, this is a space, a garden space in between two of the conical structures. Yes, and I'd like to share with you a few of the progress on site. These photos were captured about 2-3 weeks ago, and we are starting to bring in the greenery, starting with the big trees. The construction of the cones and the Sky Market is ongoing as well, and the night lightings are being installed. In terms of programming, just to recap, the pavilion is a prototype for livable and resilient cities of the future, and we try to reflect this through the programs as well. What you're seeing here is a calendar of the Expo thematic weeks, many of which are actually aligned with our interests, and where we'll try to dovetail into, for example, the climate and biodiversity weeks, the urban and rural development, health and wellness, food, agriculture, and livelihoods, as well as water. Within the SG Pavilion, there will be regular daily programs, including both physical and virtual tours, sky market screenings, a daily light show that happens every hour after dark, as well as robots that are equipped with sensors that collect data and assist with the pavilion maintenance, as well as seasonal programs and exhibitions and showcases that take place where there are special occasions, for example, the Singapore Day. So this is an overview of the programming calendar. The key Expo and UAV events happening during this period are in the yellow rows, while the Singapore Pavilion programs are in green. So in addition to the regular programs, our special events are the opening in the end September before the official opening on the 1st October. We are co-curating together with Expo a World Majlis Forum in tandem with the Urban and Rural Development Week in November. Singapore Day, as I mentioned, is on 22nd January. So for the international participants, what happens is the Expo has designated one day for them to mark as their own. This is usually their national day if it happens to fall within this period. But for us, since the 9th of August falls outside of this window, we have identified 22nd of January to be an occasion to celebrate our soft culture through our programs, and also a Water Week in the month of March 2022. We are also looking to bring in speakers from the relevant industries to join the business forums during the Climate Week, the Knowledge Week, the Travel Week, and the Health Agriculture Week, as well as the Water Week. So this is basically what I have to share about the Singapore Pavilion. If you have any questions or you feel that the Pavilion is a good platform for you to further your interests, do get in touch with us through the official email that the webinar organizers have provided. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Larry and Bial. If you have any questions about the Singapore Pavilion, please email us at contactus, one word, at UAESBC.com. After hearing all of our speakers today, we hope you are now more informed about the opportunities available for you in UAE, either in the long run or just within the next few months at Expo 2020. But if you have any queries, don't worry, because we have now come to the panel discussion segment of the webinar. The discussion will be moderated by Dr. Brian Sugar, President of the UAE Singapore Business Council. If you have any questions, please use the Q&A window to type your questions, and please do not use the chat window. The panelists for this session are Mr. Leonard, Country Manager, APAC, Abu Dhabi Chamber; Mr. Harinder Singh, President, Singapore Business Council, Dubai; Johnson Paul, CEO, Singapore Indian Chamber of Commerce and Industry; Azrul Nizam Shah, Executive Director, Singapore Malay Chamber of Commerce and Industry; Shadi El Bono, Head of Macro Strategy Research, Emirates MBD. And now I would like to hand the session over to Dr. Brian Sugar. Dr. Brian, please.
Thank you very much, Abdul Wahab, for your introduction. Ladies and gentlemen, you've heard speeches from the President of the Indian Chamber of Commerce, from the Malay Chamber of Commerce, who gave you a very good overview of their respective chambers. You had great presentations, PowerPoint presentations from the Abu Dhabi Chamber, the Dubai Chamber, from a leading economist from the UAE, and also a very interesting presentation on the Singapore Pavilion at the Expo 2020, which will be this year, Expo 2021, major global event is going to take place in Dubai. Now we come to a panel discussion, and Abdul Wahab has introduced the panelists to you. I welcome them to this panel discussion, and I will exercise the moderator's prerogative of getting some questions flowing, and after some discussion, I would very much welcome participation from the attendees to the webinar. And you can do so by asking your question to the facility under the Q&A chat or Q&A feature within Zoom. And our panelists, our expert panelists, will certainly be delighted to address your queries. Let me start off with Harvinder from Dubai. Welcome, Harvinder. And Harvinder, you represent the Singapore Business Council in Dubai. And the previous speakers from the Indian Chamber, the Malay Chamber, and the two UAE chambers have given an expose about themselves. We would like to hear from you about your business organization, the Singapore Business Council in Dubai, its history, its background, its objectives, and some of your activities. And also, perhaps when you talk about these areas, tell us, in your opinion, what would be the attractions of Dubai? I know you represent Dubai, but you could focus on Dubai and go broader vis-a-vis the UAE. In terms of Singapore companies, going forward, emerging out of the COVID-19 era. Over to you, Harvinder.
Well, Dr. Shekhar, thank you very much for organizing this. And ironically, I'm not in Dubai, I'm actually in Georgia right now for a sudden work trip. Yeah.
How exciting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. The SBC, the Singapore Business Council in the UAE in Dubai, right, was set up in 1999 by a group of volunteers to promote networking opportunities between Singaporeans and Singaporean professionals and Singaporean companies, right, within the UAE. Primarily because it's quite surprising when I found out also there are almost 3,000 Singaporeans, right, just in the UAE alone, right, so we figured it's a good way to network and to build up strong relationships across the board. So over time, it evolved, to provide the networking and the interaction opportunities are expanded from being more Singapore focused, right, towards bringing in UAE companies, right, who are interested in Singapore, and Singaporean companies, right, who are interested within the UAE markets itself. And then we did that in conjunction, with organizations like yours. We organized a fantastic webinar like this today. And of course, with providing support to Enterprise Singapore as and when required, right? So we conduct a wide variety of events, primarily, again, focused on the business community. We're not a social club. So we had to do once in a while, the webinar thing, we had to do one activity for well-being for the members. There was more of a personal basis rather than on a business networking. But most of our events are based primarily on business networking. So recently we had an Invest in Sharjah joint program to talk about the one Emirates Sharjah, what are the opportunities that are there to invest, what are the regulatory environments that operate that country in that particular emirate was there. And then on April the 5th, we actually have a fintech event coming up, right? So basically our events are primarily business related. Currently, because of the COVID scenario, we moved them into virtual events. Every year, we started last year, our inaugural Business Council event. We talk about opportunities within the region itself. Sorry. Hello?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, sorry, incoming call, and this thing got locked out. Yeah. So sectors of interest, I guess anything that provides a sustainable business revenue base, right? Within the UAE, right? Besides oil and gas. I think the two recent trends that you see coming up quite a bit. One is there's a very strong technology focus. The reason being that when you go into tech, right, it's scalable, at a global level. And number two, recently the government has now, the UAE has now talked about developing a strong manufacturing base, called with the tagline of Made in UAE. So these two are, I think, where you're going to find a lot of tremendous opportunities coming up within the UAE itself. Okay? In terms of attractions, couple of things. A, it's safe. Okay, people. Why I'm saying this is because some people tend to mistake. They read the paper, they hear about regional issues here and there, right? But being here within the region, trust me, it's safe. There's personal safety is there. There's political stability. There's economic stability. Rule of law is well known. Okay, again, there's misperception, that anything goes wrong is about wasta and all that. Well, no, not always the case, right? If there is really an issue to be addressed, right? The courts and legal systems here do work pretty well. There's now 100% foreign ownership for a lot of activities compared to before. So local sponsors are not always required in a number of sectors now. It's much easier to do business these days, and I found the authorities to be very responsive and very supportive. And this is across the board, whether it's Dubai, Abu Dhabi, Ras Al Khaimah, Fujairah, Ajman, Sharjah, Queen, right? Everybody is very, very supportive when it comes to helping businesses set up within the UAE itself. I think the only word of caution I need to always explain to people that the UAE is a matured market. Okay, so if the idea of coming over here and suddenly thinking that you can get a pricing premium on every single item you sell, I don't think it's going to work out there. Okay, you have to treat the UAE as being a mature market like Singapore, and you have to have something, a product that adds value and is cost effective to be sold over here, right? And used over here. You do that, and that's it. The whole market is yours for taking. And last but not least, right, is that like Singapore, where you have Singapore being in a region and as a hub for the region, right? The UAE itself, right, is pretty well positioned, right, to be a regional hub. So base yourself in the UAE, establish yourself over here, and then you have the whole region around you, for which you can do more business to grow your ventures.
Thank you, Harvinder, for your very extensive response to the question. I have a question here for Azrul. The president referred to the halal sector.
Yeah.
And if you look at the global Islamic economy, which is about $2.8 trillion,
yeah.
The biggest player is Malaysia because of their strength in finance. But actually, if you look at all these 6 pillars, the remaining 5 pillars, the UAE is actually number 1.
Mm-hmm.
Overall, they're number 2. And the second most important pillar in the Islamic economy is F&B.
Yeah.
And I understand that your members have a large sort of preponderance in the F&B sector, particularly the halal F&B sector. Therefore, do you see opportunities there in the halal F&B sector for your members in terms of going to the UAE and looking at the various avenues to operate there in the respective either production or franchising or distribution of their halal food products that are manufactured here? What are your views?
Yeah, thanks for the question, Dr. Shekhar. Yeah, you're right to say that we have about 20% of our membership that equates to slightly over, maybe almost 200 independent businesses in the F&B sector, covering various parts of the supply chain, either from the retail portion all the way up to the manufacturing and distribution portion of F&B. I think that there is definitely opportunity. If you look at how UAE is structuring their economy in their 2021 vision and moving forward, I think there's 2 key, I guess, economic terms. One is the Islamic economy and also the green economy, right? And I think one of the things that we're trying to reshape, or we're trying to kind of mold amongst our members, is the fact that this whole green and sustainability play is not something that is in competition with the halal play, but it's in fact complementary. Because after all, halal is the terminology which is not so much religious in nature, but rather in the way a food is prepared in a manner that is acceptable for consumption, so to speak. So personally, from the SMCCI side, I think there's many opportunities for our members to actually tap on the capabilities, the vision, and the strategic trust, the facilities that are available in the UAE. I believe Leonard in his earlier speech mentioned about the various opportunities, the fact that the vision to put themselves as a manufacturing hub in the world. And I think this is something that is, I would say, not present or lack of perhaps in the SMCCI membership. So we have good coverage in the distribution and retail downstream portions, but we don't have so much opportunity or foothold in the manufacturing, the farming, the sourcing part of the supply chain. So I think it's a really, really good opportunity to leverage on the fact that they have land and they have a drive to turn that into a manufacturing hub. And then how can we then synchronize our supply chain all the way from farm to fork? So definitely opportunities there.
That's a good answer. So I could also add perhaps that for manufacturing, importing workers is rather easy, as you know.
Exactly.
So that's another point that some of your members who are in the food, halal food manufacturing sector may want to consider as well.
For sure.
Thank you for your response. I want to go on to Shadi. Shadi, you have given a very comprehensive account of the economic issues, starting with the global issues, and then, of course, Dubai, UAE. Very briefly, without taking too much time, could you give us a quick snapshot of what's happening economically as we emerge out of the COVID-19 era in a couple of very important countries for Singapore businessmen, in addition to UAE, i.e. Saudi and Qatar?
Yeah. All right, let's
Oman as well, if you have time. But
I'll start off with Saudi Arabia, and to be honest, Qatar is not within our coverage for the moment, but we are reinitiating coverage of the Qatari economy. But just to give you an idea on Saudi Arabia, and Saudi Arabia, the focus is really all about the budget. And we expect the authorities to continue to prioritize reducing the budget deficit over increasing spending to boost growth in the economy over there. So we are assuming government spending this year in Saudi Arabia would be in and about the region of 990 billion Saudi riyals. This would bring the budget deficit down over there to minus 1.5% of GDP, compared to our previous estimate of 5.7% of GDP. So this would be the smallest budget deficit for Qatar since, or for Saudi Arabia, sorry, since 2013. The story in Saudi Arabia is that GDP growth will be just 0.7% this year against our initial estimates of 2.5%. And the main reason is the focus on cutting oil production that we've talked about earlier with OPEC. So with Saudi Arabia, given the importance of the oil sector to the economy, and given the fact that we're not going to be seeing oil output picking up, growth has been revised down. So we see it at 0.7% against our initial estimates of 2.5%. However, as we did in the UAE going into 2022, we have raised our growth forecast over there to 6.8% from 3.6%, respectively. Over there in Saudi, again, key points to keep in mind, PMI has been declining. So we've had a reading or a print of 53.9 in February. This is the lowest since October 2020. Slower new work, slower output growth, and employment in the private sector has declined for a third month in a row. Private sector credit growth in Saudi Arabia is quite robust. It picked up at the beginning of the year to 14.4%. M3 money growth, which is a measure of liquidity, was up 9.2%. And inflation will remain high until July 2021 in our expectations, when last year's VAT and custom duties increases came into base. Remember, the story in Saudi Arabia is slightly different than the UAE. You still have a relative lockdown, so difficulty with people moving in and out of the economy over there. You do have extremely aggressive plans by the government to develop the economy, but in the interim and over the period of the year, they do have headwinds from that lower production of oil, from the fact that you are having inflation building up in the economy simply because of that one-off rise in VAT that happened last year. So that boosted prices, that took away a little bit from consumer spending appetite. But as we said, as we go into the middle of the year, given a year has passed on that, it will sort of feed into the economy over there. In Kuwait and Oman, again, it's all really about the oil story over there. Well, Kuwait seems to be haggled rather than by the oil story, by the parliamentary issues that seem to put, let's say, a block against a lot of developments that should be taking place. So there was supposed to be a new public debt law in Kuwait that was passed this year, blocked again by parliament. So difficult situation over there, but they are being buffeted by higher oil prices, which should be able to more than compensate for the lower production and will reduce that budget shortfall, which we're initially expecting at 24.2% of GDP down to 14.6% of GDP. So really higher oil prices stepping in to save the day in Kuwait. In Bahrain and Oman, again, the benefits there seem to be higher oil prices on their budgets, and that sort of reducing the pressure to introduce new taxation and sort of cut spending further in the near term. Remember, both Bahrain and Oman badly need more government spending, more government outlays, want to bring up their economies to the level of competing economies in the GCC, but also equally to sort of support the economy where they don't have some of the dynamics that some of the larger GCC members seem to enjoy. So overall, it's a picture really driven by oil this year. Remember, one thing I would say about the region is that we had an absence of direct government intervention through outlays. So this was compensated by lower government fees and by the economies in certain places opening up earlier, and that helped.
Thank you, Shari, for your good response on the prospects outside the UAE. A question for you, Johnson. Interesting phenomena in the Indian business sector in Singapore. Obviously, there is a strong indigenous Singapore Indian business presence, but over the past 10 years or more, that has been augmented by a significant influx of Indian companies that have used Singapore and are going to expand their base in Singapore because Singapore is an excellent hub for their international businesses, not just within ASEAN and Asia, but potentially beyond Asia, potentially, I would say, the UAE as well, because the UAE is also, like Singapore, a hub for the Middle East. And indeed, there's tremendous synergy between Singapore and UAE as a hub for respective hinterland. Do you see this prospect of leveraging the UAE status as a hub for the whole of the Middle East and frankly even Africa as something that would be of interest to your membership?
Yes, I think there are about 8,000 Indian registered companies in Singapore. And more recently, because of the new rules pertaining to capital gains tax, companies registered in Cayman Islands and Mauritius are also flooding the Singapore market. So obviously, it has created quite a significant shift of capital as well. But having said that, I think UAE is interesting and exciting for not only Singaporeans, but also for the Indian companies that are present in Singapore. And I must say that the newer companies are obviously partnering with Singapore entities to set up their offices here because of RCEP, the Regional Cooperative Economic Agreement, which Singapore is very much part of, but India is not. So many of these companies that want to take advantage of the RCEP, of course, are parking themselves in Singapore and partnering with local companies. Now, for UAE, what is significant is, of course, the ICT industry. I think they are planning for some 23 billion injection into the ICT industry in UAE. So obviously that's very significant, and primarily in the telco, IoT space. There's a lot of interest by Singapore companies to venture into UAE to take advantage of this huge injection of capital. I must also say that little is known of the gold trade, which a lot of the SICCI companies are also involved in. So Dubai is actually one of the top 4 importers of gold, superseding Hong Kong and US. And a lot of our companies that have gold mines in Africa are actually trading the gold in Dubai. So the third area, of course, of significant importance to SICCI companies or the Indian companies in Singapore is the construction engineering. Now that the UAE laws have permitted to have 100% ownership, of companies in the construction industry and engineering, of course, that becomes very exciting for a lot of companies to have a presence in Dubai, only because they have 7-hour access to Kenya, to London, to Nigeria. So the accessibility that Dubai offers is, of course, very, very attractive. Now, it's not just the location, but it's also the fact that they have good banking facilities as well as a good arbitration center as well. So it's backed up by these 2 important institutions that companies want to have. Now, the last sector that is of interest to a lot of these companies, of course, the hydrogen economy. By hydrogen economy, I'm also talking about the fuels, undersoil fuels that UAE has, in harvesting hydrogen. And needless to say, the need for water and water industry is very huge and sophisticated in the UAE. So the hydrogen economy opens its doors to a whole range of new startups as well as established companies in this space. So these are the primarily 4 sectors that I think will be of significant interest in Indian companies in Singapore and SICCI companies.
Thank you very much for that very interesting response, Johnson. And this is why I feel this webinar is very timely, because 1, we are exposing the opportunities in the UAE to your membership, respective membership. And 2, I think we should really seriously think of following this up with actual business delegations, incorporating your membership who are interested in furthering the opportunities in terms of exploiting the opportunities there. And I think the Expo 2020 will be the opportune time to organize such a business delegation. Of course, inshallah, the travel corridor will be in place. Yeah. Let me ask Leonard, yes, from the Abu Dhabi Chamber. Singapore companies often need partners, obviously, sometimes agents, franchisees, so on and so forth, counterparties, in other words, in your particular coverage, Abu Dhabi, and they may need help. In fact, they will need help to point them in the right direction. To what extent can the Abu Dhabi Chamber play a role in this respect?
Excellent question, Brian. The Abu Dhabi Chamber, as I mentioned, we were set up specifically for the private sector, and one of the most important things we can do is to educate and our outreach. Now, in the past, we used to have lots of lots of delegations visiting us, and that gave us an opportunity to show them around. However, with COVID, things have changed. But inshallah, as you said, when the travel bubbles do come back, the chamber would play an important role in making, if you pardon the pun, matching Abu Dhabi companies with Singapore companies. There's something I would like to share. Singapore sells itself. Singapore is a brand. Singapore is a brand that is very respected. And this is probably one of the biggest advantage that any Singapore company can have. The fact that they have the 5 stars and the crescent. And the systems of government are almost similar. the chamber would be more than happy to organize business matching sessions, whether it's sector specific, whether it's across a range of sectors, because that's for now, of course, virtually. And we've done this very successfully with companies from Korea. It's been very, very successful. However, one thing I would like to share is hand-holding or granular help. Then you may need assistance from the players within the industry. There are many agents that you can use. Everyone claims to be an agent. We obviously check out the chamber who are the right agents to use, but creating a platform. And I think that's what we want to do, what the chamber wants to do. We want to attract that.
Thank you very much, Leonard. We are slightly over spilling on the time. There are a few questions from the attendees. I'm going to point these questions to the panelists, and I would like you to give very brief, succinct answers, okay? Very brief because of time. First question I'm going to direct to Arvinda. How does the cybersecurity market look like in the UAE? Again, brief, succinct answer, please. Arvinda?
You're on mute.
Yeah, the market is good. A lot of things have moved online now, right? And by default, cybersecurity is not the major issue. So UAE has been a pioneer in this, right? So the market opportunities are there.
Okay, very good. That's quick and very summarized answer. I think that I would agree with you. Question has been put forth on the travel corridor and what are the sort of prospects of something being established between UAE and Singapore in the near future. First of all, I'm going to direct this to Shadi actually. Can you tell us what is happening in the UAE vis-a-vis travel corridor with other countries? And then maybe we can make a guesstimate about when such a corridor could be possibly open with Singapore. Shadi, again.
Look, I mean, there's been talked about corridors with countries that have effectively had tight borders. Israel was actually recently talking about developing a corridor again with the UAE, or a green corridor, if you call that. I think one key advantage that the UAE does have over almost most other places is it has one of the highest vaccination rates in the world, right under Israel. So the willingness of a lot of countries to open that travel corridor with the UAE will be quite strong, and it will be dependent on the development of what you would call health passports, which is something I think we're all rolling into, and something that's going to be a very potent reality of our lives for a long time to come.
Thank you, Shadi. There's a question about prospects outside Abu Dhabi and Dubai. As you know, the focus has been really Abu Dhabi and Dubai in this webinar, and I'll answer that. Yes, there are other Emirates, and there are prospects in these other Emirates. For example, very briefly, Sharjah is well known for its status as an educational hub. It is also very near Dubai. A lot of people live in Sharjah and work in Dubai because of proximity. Fujairah is also an interesting emirate. Tourist prospects there, and there's also opportunity in the oil and the bunkering, oil bunkering sector, the logistics sector, and then you've got Ras Al Khaimah, which has got a very interesting free zone where they are very liberal in giving incentives to attract people to their free zone. So yeah, there are definitely opportunities outside Abu Dhabi and Dubai, but most of the talk tends to be around these two Emirates, but we would certainly be able to help any company in Singapore that wants to look at Fujairah, wants to look at Ras Al Khaimah or Sharjah, etc. So yes, there are opportunities. Come to us if you have any particular interest. A question here to Abu Dhabi Chamber of Commerce. Again, very brief, please. What special offers besides Hub 71 do you have for disruptive startups from abroad? Will you assist in funding, for example, through any of those various pockets of funds that you refer to, in your presentation? Again, you can be as brief as possible.
Very quick answer to that. If you're investing in Abu Dhabi, these funds will be available. So they want the knowledge and they want the talent. So the funds are there, but there must be a move to the country, to the Emirate itself, because it's all about Emiratization.
That's a good point, and there is a need for the company in Singapore to want to set up something in Abu Dhabi.
Most definitely.
I think that's something that has to be stressed. Last question, again, a very brief answer. This I'm going to address to Harinder again. How competitive is the e-commerce market in the UAE? Are there many e-commerce competitors? Would there be opportunities for Singapore branded e-commerce platforms to expand in the UAE? Brief answer, Harinder.
Okay, so the e-commerce market, right, is again developing. There are opportunities that are there. It's now beginning to pick up, right? And Dubai has set up an e-commerce city hub to actually support the growth of e-commerce throughout the region. So yes, my suggestion, check with Dubai Chamber or check with Dr. Brian. He'll have contacts, so we'll be able to guide you how to look at opportunities here within Dubai for e-commerce.
Thank you, Harinder. I think I'm going to now close the panel discussion. I thank my fellow panelists for their very insightful answers. I thank the attendees who asked very interesting questions. There are a couple of questions that have not been answered because of time, and we shall respond to those questions separately. We have details. Now, I would like to hand back the baton to our Master of Ceremonies, Abdul Wahab.
Thank you very much, Dr. Brian. If you have more questions to ask, you may contact us at UAESBC via email to contact us, it's one word, at UAESBC.com. We now have come to the penultimate part of the webinar. It gives me great pleasure to invite one of the most respected figures in Singapore politics and international trade, His Excellency Li Xian, to give the closing remarks. His Excellency is the chairman of the Business China and the patron of the UAE Singapore Business Council. Your Excellency, please.
Well, greetings and my warmest regards to all, and also friends in both Dubai and Abu Dhabi. Indeed, it's a great pleasure to join you at the end of this session. I sat through pretty much the entire 2-hour session, and I must tell you how much I enjoyed both the depth and the breadth of this discussion. I think we covered a lot of grounds, and on topics that are of great interest to all of us. I think this time around, when we have this discussion compared to the last time and the previous time, we are in a more upbeat mood in terms of business outlook and also knowing what to do. Both UAE and Singapore are small in terms of population. We are also small in terms of our economy, and our economic security depend a lot on the larger economic environment. So naturally, we are very outward-looking. We are very aware of what's going on in terms of geopolitics, in terms of world dynamics, and also globalized economic issues. So on that account, I would say that UAE and Singapore really make very, very good partnerships. We are very like-minded. We are very focused on what we want to achieve. And we are very determined. We have detailed plans to look forward to in 2025, in 2030 and beyond. I look at some of the presentations, and I think we have all come up with different solutions for the challenges that we face currently. And obviously, going forward, we have to strengthen among ourselves between Abu Dhabi, Dubai, and Singapore economic resilience in the form of air connections, in the form of supply chain, in the form of digital flow, finance arrangement, and in fact, perhaps also security and health and pharmaceutical kind of area cooperation. So indeed, there are many things that we can do, and I'm very glad that we are taking steps and adjusting to the environment as we discuss cooperation in all these areas. So I look forward to the World Expo in Dubai in October. I saw the beautiful rendition of the Singapore Pavilion, and I'm sure there are many other exciting pavilions that we all can learn from. And I think it is that embodiment of our vision that we can look forward to build a common, brighter and sustainable and cooperative future. So on that note, I thank everyone for participating in this afternoon's discussion, and also commend Brian and his team for working together with our Malay Indian Chamber and our partners in Dubai and Abu Dhabi, bringing our businesses together. So congratulations and thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lee. We now have come to the end of the webinar entitled Business Opportunities in the UAE in the Post-COVID-19 Era. On behalf of the co-organizers, UAE Singapore Business Council, Singapore Indian Chamber of Commerce and Industry, the Singapore Malay Chamber of Commerce and Industry, I would like to thank you for your kind attention and participation. Good afternoon, everyone, and stay safe.
Okay, well done. Right, well done. Thank you.